When I was on my deathbed, I called a lawyer to handle the inheritance procedures for my son. But unexpectedly, the authorities rejected it, saying it didn't comply with inheritance law. Mrs. Lamb, if you want to transfer your assets to him, it can only be considered a gift, not an inheritance. A gift. That's my biological son. Why can't he inherit what's rightfully his? I was shaking with rage. But on the birth certificate, I received the person listed as the child's biological mother. Wasn't me. I trembled, unable to believe what I was hearing. Just then, I got a message from Ko Tua Hoan Lam. And how does it feel raising my child for a lifetime? Furious, I went to find my husband Tam Duong, demanding an explanation. This man who claimed to love me all his life had turned on me like flipping a switch. The one I've always loved is Tua Huan. You were just deluding yourself. Getting to raise my child, use our resources, that was your privilege. It turns out on the day I gave birth, the babies were switched. My real child had already been murdered by them. I had someone take care of the asset transfers and even forged your signature. Rest easy, the three of us can finally live our dream life, all thanks to your love. I coughed up blood, unwilling to die, consumed by despair. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back on the very day I was about to give birth. A warm fluid gushed from between my legs, followed by intense, crushing contractions. Around me were the instructions of nurses and midwives. "Teach me how to push," I said weakly. The blinding white lights above made it nearly impossible to keep my eyes open. I didn't know how much time had passed until I finally heard a baby's cry. The midwife pulled off her mask and smiled. "Your baby boy has a black mole on the sole of his foot. It's a sign of great fortune and wealth." I remembered her. In my past life, Tam Dong had given food vouchers to everyone in the delivery room except for her. She had refused to take it. When she brought the baby over for me to see, I grabbed her hand and whispered, "This is the number of my father's unit. Please call him and tell him I've given birth. Don't ask questions. I beg you, please help me." She glanced at the nurses chatting nearby, looking hesitant. I gripped her hand tighter. "Please, help me. You'll be helping my child too," she nodded seriously. With that promise, I finally allowed myself to close my eyes, exhausted physically and mentally drained. When I woke up, Tam Duong was holding the baby by the bed, smiling gently. "Tio An, look, he looks just like you. Isn't he adorable?" Since it was summer, the baby was lightly wrapped. Just one glance and I saw it clearly. There was no black mole on the sole of his foot. I started coughing uncontrollably as if my guts were trying to escape my chest. This was the very child I had raised for a lifetime in my past life. Ko Tua Huan's son. As expected, Tam Duong was trying to trick me. He sat gently beside my hospital bed, still smiling with that fake warmth. "Look at him, such a bright-looking boy. I'm sure he'll take after you. He's got the potential to be a real academic. You must raise him well. Don't let his talent go to waste." I let out a cold laugh. Talent. What bullshit. In my past life, I had to teach him, strictly guiding every little step before he even got into university. And what did I get? He turned around and accused me of using him to feed my own vanity. And once he found out the truth about his origins, he hated me with every fiber of his being. Just thinking about it made me want to rip the mask off this three-person family right then and there. But that wasn't the most important thing right now. I forced down my rage and asked, "Ko Tua Huan was due around this time too, right? Has she given birth yet?" The moment I mentioned her, Tam Duong's expression softened into tenderness. "Yes, she gave birth to another boy. She had some minor bleeding. They're monitoring her in the delivery ward. Should be done by now. You rest, I'll go check on her." As soon as he stepped out, my parents rushed into the room. My mother's eyes were red as she gripped my hand, and my father sighed non-stop. I quickly stopped them from saying anything. There was something more urgent. "I need your help." With my parents' support, I made my way to Ko Tua Huan's room. Luckily, due to her bleeding, she hadn't had the chance to make the switch yet. I acted fast and took my real child back. Holding my sleeping baby in my arms, my heart softened unexpectedly. In my past life, Tam Duong claimed that Ko Tua Huan suffered from postpartum depression after losing her child. To not bother me, her so-called sister-in-law, he took her to the big city to get treatment. But in reality, the two of them lived as husband and wife. And I was left behind in a small town raising their child. Only on my deathbed did I learn the truth. Turns out, my whole life had just been the backdrop for someone else's happiness. Not this time. This time, I'll wait for the day they fall apart. Back in my room, I told my parents not to breathe a word of what just happened. My father gritted his teeth in rage. That bastard Tam actually did this. We're just going to let it slide. I gently reassured him, don't worry, I won't let that scumbag get away with it. No sooner had I said that than Tam Duong entered with Ko Tua Huan. The moment he saw my parents, his face darkened noticeably. Ko Tua Huan, with a headscarf and rosy complexion, looked radiant, clear signs of someone who just gave birth but was in excellent shape. Compared to her, I, with my sallow skin and haggard face, looked completely worn out. The entire pregnancy, Tam Dong had devoted all his time and attention to her. Any time I dared to complain, he would accuse me of being petty and selfish. Tua Huan just had bad luck, ended up with the wrong man. If I, her older brother, don't take care of her, who will? Compared to her, you're much happier. Your life is something she could never have, no matter how much she wants it. Back then, I truly believed Tam Duong was just being protective of his little sister. But looking back, what happiness did I even have? I used to think Tam Duong and I were the perfect couple, the envy of everyone. But in the end, he loved someone else. I used to see that child as a treasure, poured my heart into raising him, only to find out he wasn't even mine. At that thought, my expression froze, but the corners of my mouth lifted in a cold smirk. You see my parents and don't even bother to greet them. We're still family, aren't we? Isn't that a bit rude? Tam Duong didn't expect me to speak up like that. Back then, I had cut ties with my own family just to be with him, but he quickly composed himself, politely bowed to invite my parents to sit, even made them tea with his own hands. Ko Tua Huan looked a little displeased, but when her eyes landed on the baby in my arms, her expression lit up with joy. He's adorable, looks just like his father. As she said it, she gave Tam Duong a glance full of hidden meaning. In my past life, why hadn't I seen it sooner? Everything, the signs were always there. I spoke coldly. I think he looks more like me, pure, upright and righteous. Ko Tua Huan was momentarily silenced, but she didn't get angry. Instead, she nodded with an innocent smile. Of course you come from an educated family. You'll raise him into a fine man. Tam Duong quickly cut in, smiling gently. Honey, I've thought of a name for our son. How about Tam Huan? Let's hope he'll shine bright like his name. But I knew better that name wasn't innocent. It combined one character from his name and one from Ko Tua Huan's, almost forming a name that sounded just like hers. I rejected it immediately. Oh, my son's name is Lam Than Nam. Tam Duong's expression darkened on the spot. What kind of nonsense is that, a son taking his mother's surname? Are you trying to cut off the Tam family line? Without waiting for a reply, he picked up the baby and stared at him. The affection in his gaze was undeniable, the pride of a father. My son should obviously have my surname. We can discuss the name, but the surname is non-negotiable. As soon as he said that, his gaze fell on the baby's foot. His brows furrowed in an instant. Why is there a mole here that can't be right? I clearly remember there wasn't one. Seeing his confusion and growing panic, I couldn't help but scoff, my heart ice cold. What are you talking about? My son was born with a mole on his foot. The midwife even said it was a sign of great fortune. Ko Tua Huan, upon hearing that, immediately panicked and rushed over, yanking the baby's leg up and examining it back and forth. Her face went pale. My son doesn't have a mole on his foot. My mother couldn't hold back and cut in. This is Tu Anne's child. Why are you so worked up? So what if your baby doesn't have a mole? What's it got to do with my daughter's child? Ko Tua Huan grabbed Tam Dong, her voice full of suppressed fury. You knew, didn't you? You did this on purpose. You must have wanted your own son. The two of them stormed out of the room. Moments later, we heard Ko Tua Huan wailing from the nurse's station. My baby, oh my God! Doctors and nurses passed my room several times, all with grave expressions. He was fair and chubby when he was born. How could he be all bruised and swollen now? Exactly. And he was left on the stairs. A stray dog bit off a chunk of his leg. Blood everywhere. Poor baby, it's just heartbreaking. My heart turned cold. If I hadn't known their scheme in advance, then the baby torn apart by that stray dog would have been my son. I clutched the baby in my arms tighter. Even if his father didn't love him, he still had me, his mother, and his grandparents, and many, many people who would love him for life. A nurse came to tell me to get up and walk around a bit for better circulation. My mum helped me out of bed, and we happened to pass by the doctor's office. The dark green door was slightly ajar. Inside I could hear someone sobbing. I looked closely. Wasn't that Ko Tua Huan who had just given birth, Doctor? Please save my baby. He's still so young. He can't live like a vegetable for the rest of his life. That was when I learned. Because he had been deprived of oxygen for too long, although he hadn't died, his brain had suffered severe damage. The doctor said he would never recover. He might become mentally disabled, unable to care for himself, requiring 24/7 supervision. The treatment costs afterward would be astronomical. But Ko Tua Huan was just a poor village girl. Where would she get that kind of money? Last night, Tam Dong had already sold off all their food ration tickets and coupons, but it was like throwing a stone into the ocean. The moment she saw me, Ko Tua Huan lunged forward. It's all your fault, you evil woman. You killed my son. If it weren't for you, he wouldn't be like this. Lamb, and how could you be so cruel? The people nearby, unaware of the truth, began to side with her. Their whispers grew more vicious. I heard the baby was healthy yesterday. He must have been hurt on purpose. Someone call the police. That vicious woman needs to be locked up. I heard she was jealous because her husband was close to his sister. Twisted freak. My mum wanted to speak up for me, but I immediately squeezed her hand, signaling, don't say a word. At that moment, Tam Duong rushed in. Once he understood the situation, he let out a heavy sigh. All right, Lam An, I know you didn't do it on purpose. Luckily, the baby still has a chance at treatment. How about this? You take him in and raise him. Cover all the future medical expenses, hire someone to care for him for life. Then we won't press charges. Sound fair? Someone in the crowd sighed. A man like that? At least he's still reasonable. Yeah. Look at her, the baby's dying and she shows no emotion. I found it all utterly ridiculous. It was her who caused her own child's condition. What did it have to do with me? And now they want me to take the full dream on. If you're willing to raise my son, Ko, Tua Huan said with a sob, her voice soft and pitiful, adding to the drama, then I can go to work in peace. I'll even forgive you. Her fake fragility made the whole scene seem more convincing. Everyone was holding their breath, waiting for my reply, but I merely arched an eyebrow and smirked. This is a new era, not the old days where whatever you say is taken as truth. We live in a country governed by law. Everything needs evidence. You say I harmed your baby, what motive would I have? Besides, I had just given birth myself, alone with no help. How could I sneak into your room past all those people and attack a newborn? Just then, a young nurse named Tran Tru spoke up. But I did see you enter Comrade Ko's room yesterday. It was her, I knew it. Ko Tua Huan immediately pounced like she'd found the smoking gun, lunging at me in fury. He was just born. How could you be so heartless? I laughed coldly and said, you're getting too deep into your role. Careful lie enough and you might actually believe your own nonsense. A mother who lies slanders and harms others. Her karma will come and it will fall right back on her child. Ko Tuahuan's hand froze mid-air, unable to strike me. Just then, someone called out, "Comrade Lam, there's a phone call for you, someone from Beijing." Tam Duong quickly grabbed my arm. "Beijing, who's calling you? Don't tell me you secretly accepted your professor's offer to study there." I calmly brushed his hand off. "You know that professor was my mentor, but I turned him down for you and for the baby. It's probably just him asking me to recommend someone else." I knew exactly what Tam Duong was afraid of. Sure enough, the moment I said that, he was instantly reassured. "Right. A woman should stay home, take care of her husband and kids. Running off far away, wouldn't that drive a wedge between us? Once you and Tuahuan are discharged, the three of us should sit down and talk about the children properly." I sneered and said nothing, then turned to leave with my mother, brushing past the crowd. After being discharged, I stayed at my parents' house for a while. Tam Duong called and asked why I hadn't returned home. I casually made up an excuse. It's fine for me to stay with my parents. You can't manage 2 new mums and 2 babies all at once anyway. Right, by the way, you'd better get the money ready for the baby's treatment. If not, don't blame me for not forgiving you this time. Time flew by, and before long it was the 1-month celebration for the babies. Ko Tuahuan's child was still undergoing intensive treatment. Afraid I'd drag my feet on payments, Tam Duong had already sold their house and even farmland back in the village, supposedly to help me cover the costs. I knew he'd bring it up again today. What I didn't expect was, even after what they did to my child, Tam Duong still went all out for the party. It was held at the city's finest restaurant. He even invited a crowd of relatives from the countryside. He looked absolutely radiant. Ko Tuahuan forced a strained smile. Her complexion was pale, her spirit low, a picture of postpartum tragedy that instantly earned pity and sympathy. The two of them standing together, they really did look like a match made in hell. Amid the noisy festivities, Tam Dong put on his best gentle husband act, bowing toward me with folded hands. "Tio An, I'm transferring to a provincial job soon. I'm leaving both children in your care. Even though one of them is a bit imperfect, I trust that you'll love him just as much as you love the Nam. I've even chosen a name for him, Koku. I hope you'll cherish our past love, know that my feelings for you are truly precious." In the past life, they used the excuse that their baby had died. Ko Tuahuan had postpartum depression, so the two of them ran away hand in hand to live happily ever after. But this time, what excuse will they use now? I lifted my head and asked calmly, "You think this is just about money? Even her own mother doesn't want to take care of her. So why should I, a complete stranger, be the one to clean up the mess?" As soon as the words left my mouth, many around us began to nod in agreement. But Ko Tuahuan wouldn't back down. Her eyes brimmed with resentment. "Of course it's your responsibility. If it weren't for you, my baby wouldn't be like this. Besides," the nurse said, "you were the only one who entered my hospital room. If it wasn't you, who else could it be?" Seeing her getting hysterical, Tam Duong quickly patted her shoulder gently, comforting her and signaling that he would handle everything. Then he turned toward me and shot me a glare lamb, and I really didn't want to say anything unpleasant. "Out of respect for what we once had as husband and wife, I gave you a chance. Money can be earned again, but a lost conscience can never be retrieved." Their relatives from the countryside didn't know the full story. They just saw one of their own being bullied, and as expected, the whole gang took turns scolding me, "Chu Lam, how could you do something so wicked when you're so well educated? You studied all those books just to become this heartless. Don't you know basic decency? You did wrong, so you should make it right. Give us the money. If you don't hand it over to treat the kid, I swear I'll go full butcher mode. And who knows where my cleaver might land." I waited until they were nearly done berating me, then slowly spoke, "Aunts, uncles, today is my son's 1-month celebration. I hadn't planned on saying anything. I just wanted to save everyone's dignity." Ko Tua Huan is technically my sister-in-law. As for her and Tam Duong, I think you've all seen what's going on. The truth is they had an affair behind everyone's back and had a child together. In order to give their child better prospects, they switched the babies and made me raise theirs like a fool. Fortunately, I found out and took my own son back in time. Otherwise, the one lying on his deathbed right now would have been my son Than Nam. As soon as I finished, Tam Duong's face twisted through a dozen shades. All these months I'd remained silent, leading them to think I'd resigned myself to fate. After all, they had a witness and I had a motive. If this had gone to the police, there was a real chance I wouldn't be able to prove my innocence. That's why Tam Duong was so confident just biding his time until his promotion to the provincial office. In their minds, the child might be ruined, but at least he wouldn't drag down their lives. That was enough for them. But now, I'd ripped the whole mask off right in front of everyone. Tam Duong raised a hand about to strike me, but my father shoved him back with full force. Dad stepped forward to shield me, while my older brother swung a chair straight into Tam Duong's head. Ko Tua Huan screamed in panic and threw herself at my brother, sobbing and shouting. The Lam family is just using their city background and government connections to bully us. Ever since he married her, Tam Duong has endured so much, all for the sake of saving face. But today, you don't even bother to keep up appearances anymore. My brother had hit him hard. A large flap of skin was torn from Tam Duong's head. In the past, I would have argued with my brother over this, letting it strain our relationship. But this time, I just gently asked, "Brother, did your hand get hurt? Don't waste your strength on trash like him. It's not worth getting the police involved." My words clearly struck a nerve with Tam Duong. Trash like me? What kind of person do you think I am, huh? Lam An, didn't you choose to marry me of your own free will? And now you're talking like this. I knew it. You're jealous. You're jealous because I treat Tua Huan better. Jealousy, it's the ugliest trait in a woman. Tua Huan and I are siblings. How could you accuse us of something so filthy? Ko Tua Huan bit her lip and stayed silent. Clearly, she'd been hoping he would publicly acknowledge their relationship. But Tam Duong would never dare, especially now, in front of all these witnesses. Anyway, this is a new era now, not the old society where polygamy was tolerated. That kind of behaviour has long been condemned. Besides, on legal documents, they're still siblings. A biological brother and sister having a child together, that's incest. It's against morality and decency. Disgusting. All it would take is one person to speak up, and the two of them would be buried alive by public opinion. As expected, the guests began to side with Tam Duong. That's right, those two grew up together. There's no way they'd do something so dirty. Tuan, you're clearly just jealous. They used to play together as kids, even bathe together, running around naked like real siblings. Stop imagining things. In the end, you're only hurting yourself. I used to think I was just being paranoid. But later I realized how vicious people could be beyond anything I'd ever imagined. I wouldn't have said any of this if I didn't have proof. Tam Duong today, your relatives, friends, even your supervisors and co-workers are all here. Let me ask you one last time, are you really going to frame me? You want to pin all the blame for the child's injuries on me? The baby is this badly hurt, and you're sure you had absolutely no idea. Since meeting Tam Duong, I had always treated him with sincerity and warmth, never acting entitled. Seeing me so sharp now, he was clearly caught off guard and even a little cautious. "You're questioning me," he snapped. "Check your own conscience, someone who's done such a cruel, heartless thing and still won't admit it. I'm really disappointed in you." Every gaze now turned toward me. Even though Tam Duong tried to keep his tone firm, the panic in his expression was already showing. When I didn't respond, he started to lose control. It was Lam An. It was her. She couldn't stand that Tua Huan was better than her. She was afraid her own child would grow up to be less successful than Tua Huan's. That's why she attacked the baby. But the child's fate is strong even though she tried to strangle him. Even though she threw him down the stairs for stray dogs to tear into, he still didn't die. He stood tall on the so-called moral high ground, righteously accusing me, playing the role of a noble man. He denied all responsibility, pinned every sin on me. His expression righteous, his words resolute, as if he were delivering some irrefutable truth. Immediately someone asked, "Comrade Lam, is that true?" Before I could even speak, Tam Duong rushed in. "Of course it's true. Who else could it be?" Yes, Thua Huan had a child out of wedlock, a bit lacking in morals, but that's only because she picked the wrong man. She's never crossed anyone except Lam An. We're siblings, I've always taken care of her. But Lam An was jealous, twisted by envy, and that's why she did something so horrific. I laughed coldly. "Really, you sound so convincing." But that day when I entered Ko Tua Huan's hospital room, I was holding my own baby. I had just given birth, I was carrying my child. You think I had the time or ability to go in and harm someone? Tam Duong choked. That was because he couldn't explain. It didn't make sense at all. "You can't explain it, can you?" I sneered. "Fine then, I'll tell you, because the baby I was holding that day wasn't mine. From the moment he was born, my son had been switched. If I hadn't found out and switched them back in time, the one who'd be dead now would be my son. The injured child isn't just anyone, he's yours and Ko Tua Huan's. You two tried to harm my child and now you're suffering the consequences yourselves." The entire restaurant erupted in chaos. Very quickly, someone pieced the story together, so Comrade Tam and Comrade Ko had an affair. Had a child, then switched the babies to trick someone else into raising it, only to end up harming their own kid. Comrade Lam, do you have any proof I pulled a stack of documents from my mother's purse? Of course I do. On the day I gave birth, I noticed my baby had been swapped, so I quietly took a strand of hair from the other infant and sent it along with a sample from Tam Duong to the provincial lab. A few days ago, I received the results. It confirmed they are biologically father and son. I threw the test results straight into Tam Duong's face. He panicked, barely glanced at it before flinging it aside, stammering, "No, it's not. That's not my child. I'm not the culprit." Tua Huan jumped in to back him up. "Don't say such nonsense. How do we know you didn't bribe the testing centre?" But the report bore the red seal of the Provincial Medical Authority, the most credible institution in the region. Their clumsy lies couldn't convince anyone now. Thinking of everything that had happened in my previous life, my heart brimmed with hatred, my eyes red with rage. Whether it's true or not, I'll hand this over to the police. They'll investigate and bring the truth to light. Tam Duong still wanted to argue, but his superior had heard enough. That's enough. Not another word. Your reassignment is suspended for now. You'd better explain all of this clearly first. Hearing that, Tam Duong turned pale. His legs gave out and he collapsed to the floor. But Ko Tua Huan still refused to accept reality. She stared at me with venom eyes full of resentment. Even if the baby is mine, and Tam Duong's, that's just a lapse in morality. But what about you? How can you prove you're not the one who harmed the child? In the early days after the country was founded, the legal system was still underdeveloped. When things went wrong, suspects were often treated as guilty first. That's why I had to prove I didn't hurt that child. Because if the baby was illegitimate, then I would have the most obvious motive. At that moment, murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. Even if it's a love child, it doesn't deserve to be harmed like that. Exactly. A child is innocent. Comrade Lam might have gone too far. Just because she's been hurt emotionally doesn't mean she's automatically innocent. Even some of my old friends began to drift over, whispering, "Tuan, if it really was you, just admit it. No matter how many years they sentence you to, I'll help take care of your child and your parents. I understand you lost control because you were too angry at those two scumbags. But you're not normally like this. Only my teacher, my parents, and my older brother still firmly stood by my side. I believe in Tuan. She has a kind heart. She'd never harm a child." Ko Tua Huan sneered. "Of course he believes her. She's his student." But as an educator, how can you let personal feelings override organizational principles? My mother anxiously spoke up. Tiu An didn't harm the child. I was with her that day, Kutua Huan scoffed coldly. Legally speaking, direct relatives are not allowed to testify. Even the leader who had just scolded Tam Duong earlier now began to hesitate. Tam Duong's personal conduct is a separate issue. As for the injured child, Comrade Lam, don't blame me, I'm not taking sides. But if you really did it, then raising the child for life would at least be a form of atonement. Seeing the tide shift, Tam Duong quickly got up, brushing dust off his pants when suddenly a clear, firm voice rang out from the lobby. I can testify for her. I turned around in surprise toward the door. The person stepping in was the midwife who had helped me make a phone call that day. I can prove that this Comrade Tam here is someone with bad intentions. That day he handed me 4 food ration coupons in the doctor's office and told us that after Comrade Lam gave birth, we shouldn't disclose any details about the baby. No matter what we had to turn a blind eye. I found it very strange at the time. What kind of father behaves like that? He even said their family was too poor that if they kept the baby, both he and his wife would starve. It was absurd, completely unconvincing. I looked at her with emotion and gently smiled. Later, I refused to accept the coupons. And I also noticed that after Comrade Lam gave birth, the others in the room were acting very suspicious. I personally witnessed them switching the 2 babies. One of them had a black mole on the sole of his foot. I remember that very clearly. Then she pulled out more evidence. Those food ration coupons were definitely used. I heard they exchanged them for white rice and pork. If the police investigate, they'll know whether I'm telling the truth. Right at that moment, the police arrived. They immediately sent officers to verify the information and temporarily detained the individuals involved. Less than an hour later, a call came back from the investigative unit. Everything the midwife said was true. Seeing the police about to make arrests, Kotua Huan went berserk, lunging at me like a wild animal. She screamed, cursed, flailed her limbs like a cornered beast. Meanwhile, Tam Duong's face had gone ashen. He mumbled like a man who had lost his soul. I leaned in to hear what he was saying. It's over. It's really over. There's nothing left. Looking at him now, pitiful, broken, so different from the glorious image of him in my past life. In that life when I was on my deathbed, he and that illegitimate child stood over me, arms folded coldly, watching. Every word they spoke was like a dagger plunging into my heart. After I died, they casually took all my assets, moved to the provincial capital, lived in a big house with a refrigerator and television. Later, they even bought a car, lived in marital bliss, raised children, and enjoyed a life of wealth and happiness. And me, I didn't even have a proper grave. They wrapped my body in a torn mat and dumped me in a deserted cemetery. Not long after, even my bones were gnawed clean by stray dogs. Fortunately, heaven gave me another chance, brought me back to this very moment. 1,000 emotions welled up inside me, coldness and deep gratitude. I unconsciously hugged my son tightly. Even more fortunate was that my child still didn't understand anything. One day I would tell him, "Your father once loved you very much. He just went to a faraway place." I didn't want my son to grow up with hatred. When the police led Tam Duong and Kotua Huan away, Tam Duong asked to speak to me in private. I handed my child to my mother and stepped forward. He was in handcuffs, hair disheveled. "Why," he said, "no matter what we were once husband and wife, why must you be so heartless? Even if you didn't want to spend money treating the child, you didn't have to send me to prison, destroy my entire life like this. I won't get the death penalty. Once I'm out, I'll come back for you." I gave a faint, cold smile. "Tam Duong, you think I'm afraid of you? I didn't do this for money, not because you betrayed me, but because from the very beginning you never intended for my child to survive. Even if you no longer loved me, the Nam is your biological son. Even a fierce tiger wouldn't eat its cub. Maybe because you were too cruel now, your own son has to bear the karma for you. a mentally disabled child abandoned by both parents. I can't even imagine how he'll be bullied by the world later. My words left Tam Duong gasping so furious, he screamed that he'd kill me. Ko Tua Huan could only sob, covering her face. But I, someone who had died and come back, why should I fear empty threats? At that moment, I felt only one thing: freedom. Soon after, I brought my child to Beijing for advanced studies. After completing the course with my professor's referral, I joined a major unit at the provincial level and became a core employee. In my previous life, I was ruined by them, left with nothing. But even then, I understood the direction of economic growth and I knew how to earn more money. So this time, I chose the business world. Started a company, raised my child alone, and built everything from scratch. As my son grew up, my income steadily increased. In my past life, I was always frugal, saving every penny, dreaming of sending my child abroad and constantly bribing people to help Tam Duong rise in rank. But this life, I only wanted joy and comfort for myself and Than Nam. Later, I heard from a former colleague of Tam Duong. In the end, he and Ko Tua Huan didn't work out. Neither of them wanted to spend their lives with a disabled child, so Ko Tua Huan became the mistress of a coal mine boss in Shanxi. But the boss's wife was a terrifying woman. When she found out she had Ko Tua Huan dragged away by her men, where to no one knew, sometime later Ko Tua Huan returned, bringing back with her a sexually transmitted disease. Tam Duong once came looking for me. He stopped Than Nam after school, claiming to be the boy's father. But what surprised me was how calm Than Nam was. The boy asked, "If you were really my dad, why would my mum choose to raise me all alone, never telling me about you? You must have done something that hurt her terribly. If you made a mistake, then pay for it. Don't come looking for me again and leave my mom alone." Tam Duong still shamelessly followed him home. I opened the door holding a kitchen knife. "Tham, what do you want?" I asked coldly. He dropped to his knees right in front of me, tears and snot all over his face, begging me to forgive him. I simply threw the knife at his feet. "If you dare come bother us again, even if I die, I won't let you go peacefully." After that, I moved. No one heard from Tam Duong again. It wasn't until over 10 years later that I learned the truth. That same day, after leaving my house, he got into a car accident and died on the spot. I put the past behind me. The future for me and my son was now full of sunshine. I once thought that as long as I endured, everything would pass. But I was wrong. My weakness in my past life didn't earn their sympathy, it only made them more ruthless. This time I didn't choose forgiveness. I chose to confront. I returned every single debt, not more, not less. Not to vent my anger, but to reclaim justice for myself. And for the child I lost. After everything, I finally understood a woman can be kind, but she must never be foolish. She can be gentle, but must never be weak. Because if you don't protect yourself, no one else will. This life didn't give me a second chance, I fought for it. And from that moment on, I truly began to live. Thank you for watching Ken Stories. I hope you enjoyed a relaxing and captivating storytelling experience. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support gives me the motivation to create more amazing content.